want to just start us off with just a quick take on how you're doing? How are you feeling?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm really well. I'm really good. It's really happy to see so many people joining this call. I feel this week and last week we've been getting this traction and this momentum that I think it's really important that we now keep moving forward. And I think we're taking the right steps to do that. So yeah, that I think that starts building up some more excitement. Um, yeah, so yeah, I think everything is really good. I'll just pass it to Maxwell.
Hey, yeah, no, I'm feeling good, refreshed, and finally recovered from Halloween, and yeah, same. Looking happy to see everyone joining. Let me pass it to Gene.
Thanks, Will. Feeling great. I'm quite well. Just finished a kernel fireside and it was lovely. So a moment of immense gratitude. Appreciate everybody and all their efforts. I will pass to Antti.
Cool, thanks, Gene. I'm doing quite good today. I'm feeling happy. I'm very optimistic about everything that's happening, not only the TC, but all the things in my life. Um, and yeah, I guess just that. I'll pass it over to Nate.
Thanks, Bear. Yeah, doing good, I guess. Good news that one of my good friends passed away, so I'm heading home to a funeral this weekend. So, outside of that, I'm really excited to see the TEC. We're starting to get that traction and start to move forward with things. So, very excited about that. I'll pass it over to Livy.
Thanks, Nate, and I'm sorry to hear that. Um, um, I'm feeling good. I stopped in Peru like for the next month, and I haven't stopped for a while. And at the same time that it feels really good, I'm also starting to feel anxious because I'm in a very small town. Like there's not even restaurants around. And I'm hungry now, and I'm thinking I have to cook my own food. So yeah, all good. And I'll pass to Irem.
Hi, I miss you all so much. I'm happy to be here after 4 weeks of intense travel and finally recovering a little. And yeah, just want to catch up. And even though I won't be able to be as active anymore, just want to just happy to come back occasionally and see and learn about how this is all going. And yeah, just I don't know, even virtually, super happy to see you all. And yeah, this is great. I'll pass it. I joined 2 minutes late, so I'm not sure. Gideon, can I pass it back to you?
I can take it. Yeah, I'm feeling great. I'm driving to Panama right after this call, so that's kind of fun. And yeah, I might be packing a little bit while I listen to the enjoyment this really fun call. Rex, did you go?
No, I've just joined a minute ago. I've literally just come back from work and I'm getting settled here at home. And I'm excited to see the progress and join in on this call. Who hasn't gone? Louis, have you gone yet?
How about Tam?
Hey, so happy to see everyone on this call. So for intentions, distractions, I'm sorry, I didn't see if we had an opening question, but I'll say intentions are, of course, to continue this transformation. I thought we had some really good momentum on Tuesday, and it feels like we're going to continue that, and that's really exciting. And then distractions are, we are at an airport waiting to board, but it looks like our boarding might be 7:05 now. I think I can actually stay for this whole call, although I'll probably be more quiet than usual. Pass back to you, Gideon.
Okay, cool. Hey, Chewy. Hey, welcome. We're just doing just a quick check-in. How are you feeling? If you're speaking, I can't hear you right now.
Hello, hello. Test. Okay, perfect. um, this week, to be honest, I'm feeling a little bit more motivated because I feel that just like the stress of like overcoming the situation and all of that is um a little bit like past contributors in communications um, because of how enriched like the conversations have been, and I feel that also these transformation sessions and discussions uh, have also like constructed like a very safe space to like discuss and share different ideas. So in general, like in a temperature check, I'd say I'm starting to gain like more motivation and confidence in the decisions that are being taken by the community in general. Should I pass it to someone else, or well, maybe back to you, Eden?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think everybody's gone. I'll just give a quick. So I'm doing really well. I actually it's starting to feel good again. Like it's starting to feel like things are moving. And I had a nice talk with Tam, and we kind of some back and forth, and um, we've agreed that I'm gonna try to help us drive this process forward. And what I would say is like my motivation for this is totally servant leader. Like this is not me trying to like exert some kind of like power play or anything like that. I'm just here to try to help. I really believe in this mission. Like I deeply believe in this mission, and I want to see this place succeed. And I think we're in a little bit of a rough patch, but like I think with like just probably a couple more weeks of like concerted effort, we'll start to see some clearing, and I think it's going to start to feel really nice. And I'm just so happy to see all of you here today. You in particular, because I wasn't sure how often we were going to see you, so it's so nice to see your profile pic there. So yeah, so a lot of stuff is kind of building in the background. There's some kind of plans and stuff that I'm putting together that are very, very rough. And so I'm doing some initial advice process with Tam, and I'll probably start to, what I'd love to do is share that with everybody next week. But I want to get a little bit more feedback on it. But the basic things are like, how do we move this forward in terms of like some process to like keep this. So basically, what will these meetings look like going forward? How do we make sure that they're super effective and then but also respectful of the culture? And then also just some thoughts on like how do we I added this into the agenda, but like how do we make sure that we can keep the wheels on this bus and keep things moving and actually pay the people who are doing that work as we're making this transition? That's super important. So because it's only fair, and also we don't want to lose people. So I added that on there. So for today, I just basically did kind of two agenda items. One may be pretty quick, but it's just basically in the community call that's coming up today. What I was recommending is, we're kind of in this transition. So, if we did the kind of the normal format, might feel kind of weird because there's a number of working groups that are not here anymore to report out. So, given that we said last time that we were canceling the community call because we're looking at reformatting it, I just thought maybe we just open it up to the community for some input on what people would like, and just use that session as kind of like a jam session to figure out what we really want to do. So that's what I wanted to start today, is just kind of open it up for thoughts on not so much what we want to do with community calls, because I'm hoping we'll do that in the community call, but like, how should we structure this conversation today in the community call if we're going to do this?
Well, I always like passing it around, giving everyone a shot to talk, and that's always fun, especially to start. We can start with praise as we normally do, and then maybe we bring in like, what would you like to see in the community call? If it was like, what do you expect to see in a TEC community call? I think would be a nice prompt for a question.
Anybody else have thoughts on this? I mean, we've been talking about this for a month or so, so I'm sure there's thoughts.
Yeah, I think at the baseline of what we're trying to accomplish is trying to figure out what the purpose of the community call is. What are we trying to convey? Are we going to take this time to update the community on the initiatives that are going on internally? Are we trying to get more people engaged or participating in the news that is going on in the TE community? I think there are different flavors that we could select from in terms of purpose that would drastically change how we format it. So I think that is something that we really need to come to consensus about.
I second what Griff said, and I think there could be also a question of like, is there something you're doing you would like to share in a 30 seconds frame?
I'll chime in with some more second thing as well. I mean, I think what Griff said is really important. I think that there's something really open and inviting to giving everyone space during the community call. So it would be great if we can somehow retain that. And then, our former format was essentially the review of a scrum. So the previous purpose was to sort of show off the work that all of the working groups were doing to the community, but that doesn't need to stay our purpose. Our purpose can pivot and be whatever the community would much rather see at whatever cadence we decide to hold it.
I third that because you had a second. I third what Griff said. I think it's if we're trying to find purpose to the community, cool. Then why not open the floor to the community? Be as direct as possible with it.
I might have a good idea for that. I feel that at this point, the T fundamentals course is doing great. Maybe we could kind of like take what we really liked about the spotlight, but mix it with giving like token engineers that are like out of the oven, like a platform, to like speak about their ideas. I mean, they are very excited about what they're learning and just everything that they're experimenting with. And I feel that it could also be like a good strategy so that they can, like have their own invitees, and most of them are going to be new members to the community. So maybe reformatting the spotlight so that it can be more about like token engineering 101 or just maybe more like testimonials kind of like format about like, oh, what have you been learning, like something that can really like capture that excitement around how the course is growing.
I have to second that. I was yesterday on a call from some guys that made like a group of people out of the academy, and what was quite nice. We were chatting about everything on the course, about some things that they wanted to work on, and they were wondering where do they find those resources, how can they start working, those kinds of those things. And I think we may as well provide that space for that kind of stuff in the community call.
Okay. Any other thoughts about today? How best to structure this? If not, this is probably enough. I mean, I think, yeah, just kind of an open invitation for comments and just brainstorming, and just trying to make sure we hear from everybody would be really good. Simple. Anything else though? And Nate, I like the idea about the purpose too. So maybe we structure something around that.
I don't know if anyone wants to like go gung ho on this, but we could make it a Miro board session even, or at least have some way for people to participate or write it down. If we want to go crazy, we could have full on Miro board and host like community call, input, people put in and put some music on and that kind of stuff. But it's a lot of work to host and to brainstorm a Miro board session and then actually like execute on it. And I can't do it. I can't even come. So
I don't think it's that bad doing this. One thing I wanted to clarify is it's not right after this. It's an hour after this call, right? Because we've got the time change. So I'm willing to try to put something together if somebody has time right after this call to maybe give me a hand. I could do that. If not, I can try to do it myself.
I can help you right after this call, but I'm double booked for the community call, so I'll have to leave like in half of the hour. But I can help you
Okay.
set up the board.
That's great. Thank you, Livy.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can help as well. I like boards, so I can help.
Okay. Yeah, all right. That's great. So why don't the three of us just maybe stay on after this call and we can just do a quick jam. I don't think it has to be fancy, but I agree having the ability for people to just put up ideas and then do stars and things like that is nice. Okay, well, hey, let's move on and get into the other big topic, which is in order to keep us moving forward. So there is a process that I'm trying to kind of work through. It's not done yet. I mean, not done. It's not even to a place where I can share it really easily with everybody. But in the meantime, I didn't want to lose momentum. So what I did was just basically took the stuff that was that got the most responses from Bear's board last week, the urgent and important workflows, and so I just put those here. And then I added two, which I just took a little bit of liberty because the second to the last one is phasing out the working groups, which is basically just the work that Nate and Tam started earlier. And I just, I think one of the things we just got to make sure is that we're not leaving stuff behind, like starting things and leaving it behind. So I put that on here. And then the last one is the thing I mentioned at the beginning. I just think it's super important. Like we've got people hanging in there right now who are not getting paid. And and they're doing work, and I just don't think that that's right now. So I think we got to figure out some kind of interim thing to address that. So I added that on there. So what I thought would be good is if we could just go. I basically kind of just copied this down in the notes section, and what I thought is we would just go through from the stuff that got the most stars all the way down. And maybe just do just a quick check-in on what we know is happening there and who is actually kind of taking the lead on that right now. So let's start with the multi-sig management. Well, actually, before we dive further, does anybody else have thoughts about this? Like, is there like a better way of doing this aside from just diving in?
I think they're just highlighting what needs to be done, what needs to be answered in terms of sense making. I think that understanding what wallets need to exist, what are the options for the working group stewards who do have currently multi-sigs with funds in them, what their options are in terms of returning those funds or dispersing those funds to another wallet, and then someone to kind of spearhead what we go from there. Especially for those working groups that are sunsetting at the moment.
Okay, let me just have one kind of process thing, because in order for me to kind of keep nudging this forward, it would be great if as you're making comments, hey Mitch, if you're as you're making comments, rather than me trying to paraphrase what you're saying, particularly as it's kind of like getting into the weeds on some of this stuff, just type it in. That would be great. And and again, I think that we're not going to have time to go into detail on all of these things and solve these problems here, obviously. So what would be great is, yeah, if we could just say like, who's kind of right now holding this? That would be the first thing that I think would be really important, is just like who's the one person, or are there multiple people who are thinking about this and working on this right now? And then, yeah, just like what are the key things we're trying to solve? That'd be great, rather than diving into actually solving it. Does that seem fair? Maybe I shouldn't ask open-ended questions like that. I'll just say yeah, I'm gonna let's move forward with that, and then if people object, you can just say something. So Nate, who on the multisig, are you kind of taking the lead on that right now?
I can, yeah. I think there's a lot of advice process that needs to be going through. I see somebody asked the question, didn't we agree on waiting to have a clear view before returning everything? Yeah, I mean, that is one of the aspects of it, but I think it's really important to lay out the options for the working groups, and then decide, what is the most efficient way we can do this, whether we need to return these to the common pool. Do we want to disperse some of those funds to the transition process? There's a couple of questions that need to be answered. So I'm more than willing to spearhead this area.
I just want to say, I think the idea of creating a fund for the transition process is very appealing, and talks to the last point on this agenda of being able to compensate the people who are working on the transition right now and have been working on it. So I think that's also a really nice option to have.
Can I make a comment about advice process? That I feel, yeah, I feel like we're getting a little bit lost on advice process, as thinking like, oh, here are all the options. What are opinions about all of these options and how we could move forward, and then we never move forward. I think the purpose of advice process is having a clear proposal where the person who's proposing has a direction they want forward, and they can also expose what are the other options, but there's like a clear path for execution, and then people can give advice on either that's a path they agree with or not, and if there's something to modify in that path. And if people completely disagree with that path, people are incentivized to make another proposal. But I think the way we're moving, we're like not really making anything concrete. So yeah, just making a clear proposal. If people have feedback, great. And then the person who is making the proposal integrates that feedback and executes the proposal.
That is a really good point. Actually, Livy, I'll shoot you this doc that I'm working on that is kind of all based on that. Like, how do we really use the advice process as it was intended to, which is like not to get stuck in analysis paralysis or consensus forming and, like trying to get consensus on everything. We'll kill ourselves if we do that, if we have to get stuck doing that for every little thing. So yeah, so I'll share this to you. It's very rough, but I'll share this with you. I would really love to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, the idea of advice process is actually the opposite of consensus. It's like we don't need to go through a consensus process. We can just go through this fast route where people that are affected by what is being proposed have a chance to give an input, and that can still be executed like as fast as possible.
I would say that my only counter to your comment, Livy, is that when there isn't a consensus on moving forward with whoever decides on the path that has been articulated, that there isn't an incentive to create another path. Not a lot of people respond with a new solution. it's left in the hands of the person who created the first path, and they are stuck with the same problem of non-consensus.
But the thing is that if consensus is enriched and the people who had a chance to propose something else or to modify that initial proposal, if they don't participate, and the proposal is executed and they don't like that, I mean, it's kind of on them to then take action. And then that's kind of the purpose of bureaucracy.
So can I make a suggestion? Because this thing that I was pulling together yesterday is like all wrapped around advice process. Like, how do we use advice process to drive project management? And so maybe what we do is have this discussion next week, because I do think that there's a lot of misunderstanding about advice process. I mean, it's an easy thing to misunderstand. I actually been reading Frederick Laloux's Reinventing Organizations, which is a great book, and he talks about it a lot. And I think even just helping everybody, like Livy, would be great to maybe go into a little bit more detail about this next week, if you'd be willing, because I think it's, yeah. Is that cool? Can we do that?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. All right. So any other comments about the multi-sig management before we move on to the next one? Does everybody feel like the questions that Nate, and I can't tell who's writing this, I'm assuming it's Nate. Is there any other thing in here that needs to be addressed? And I would also say, like, feel free to look at this and come back to it later. If things come back, this document will be here. It's posted in the stewards channel. So let's keep moving then. So credentials management. Nate, that's you. Also?
Yeah, and Rex has contributed a lot to this conversation as well. I don't know, Rex has a kind of a clear vision for this in terms of the options that we have in terms of distributing credentials. You want to go ahead, Rex? Sorry.
Okay, so we do need to take a look at what's currently being done in a bit more detail, because I believe that we are using a non-open source password manager, and I'm not too sure how we're sharing the passwords, but say I know that some aren't being stored and some are being stored in the password manager. So there needs to be a process of going through and consolidating these. I know the Dune password isn't on there, and so there might be one or two that we missed that need to go on there. And then aside from that, I've been looking at whether we should stay in the current using the current solution, or move to a more organization password manager, which would allow us to more granularly keep roles. So we could have a comms role, and only those in the comms role in this password manager can actually get access to that password, rather than it being individual sharing, right, Chewy? I know that you've used it, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have keys to this manager.
You mean Dashlane?
Yeah.
Oh, actually, Septi is the one that has like the Dashlane credentials, and he is able to give the rest of the community access. But I think that, like, for Twitter, both Septi and I have the 2FA, and we don't really handle it through Dashlane as far as I remember. But maybe it would be a good idea to check in with him, because also there's like something about like a premium version and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's also so my problem with Dashlane, if we're going to talk about premium versions, is that it's not open source. And so if we're going to look at premium options, Personally, I think it's more it's more secure. First of all, because open source cryptography is more secure in crypto. We know that, and yeah. Secondly, it's not to the vision of the community. So if we were going to pay for one, I'd probably suggest either Bitwarden or another one looking at, or self-hosting straight up, which would be cheaper than either option. No,
So Rex,
yes.
maybe so rather than like getting into the details of it, are you and Nate, maybe can you work on a proposal?
Yeah, happy to do that. Happy to have a call with Deputy sometime this week or before Tuesday and come up with something with an outcome for whatever next meeting is. Nate, are you happy
for
with
sure.
that?
Completely on board.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you. Any other comments from other folks before we move on about password management? Okay. Cool. So, so transition to the new structure. This is a hard one because this is such a big box, and there's so much in it. So, I think that what I agreed to is to take that on in terms of being the kind of like the shepherd of the process. What would be great though is getting some folks who are like really interested in this process and helping to drive this process forward. I can use all the help I can get. And, you know, so what I mean by that is, you know, I would say like, in terms of time commitment, like at least an hour a week, like a concerted meeting that's kind of like focused on this and trying to drive this forward, probably on Fridays, maybe instead of the sample meeting. And we can change the timing of it, but like having a small, you know, relatively small group of folks who are dedicated and willing to dive in and help to just kind of brainstorm and figure out this process. So, any volunteers?
I'm up for that. I'll put my name down there.
Yeah, actually, maybe if you could just type your, because I'm trying to type and then look at who said what. If you could just type your name in, that would be great in the doc.
I believe you're asking for people who are happy to support the transition to the new structure, right, Gideon?
Correct. Yep.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I can't type. May I ask somebody to type my name?
Sure, I'll do it.
Thank you. Sorry. Thanks.
And just to be clear, I mean, this is just people who are going to be like focusing on process, but the actual decision making and kind of like advice process and all that will clearly, it'll be like this will be a community wide thing, right? It's just like we need some people to kind of like be able to step up and help. Invest some time in
I will
keeping the
be
process moving.
off in December, but for November, I am down to help. And I actually feel like it's simpler than we think. I feel like these meetings we're having now, we're getting so much solved, and there's a lot of things that are getting into track. And it's probably like, I don't know if there's much more than this to be done.
Yeah, you might be right. I think that the way I'm seeing it right now is that there's a bunch of stuff that's kind of like short term, the urgent, important stuff. But then I think we can morph this process into kind of the longer term strategy, kind of roadmap work. So I think that it will continue over time. But yeah, I agree that like this short term stuff, I think I think you're right. I think we will get through this relatively quickly. Okay. All right. So, yeah, and I mean, just in terms of like, what this looks like, as I mentioned at the beginning, not everybody was here for this part, but I think that this is going to be about like, what does this core team look like? Like, what are the functions of this core team? And drawing on some of the exercises from last week, you know, using that to figure out what the functions are, and then really just process. So that's the thing that I was talking about, like a kind of an advice process or advice driven project management process, is what I'm looking at. So those are what I'm hoping to be kind of the first deliverables on this, and then I think if we get that in place, that will really help a lot, because that will be the engine that will help us to like continue the process. Okay, so the next one is community meetings. We already talked about one of those, which is the main community call, and we're going to do we're going to open that up to advice. But I guess my question before we get into that is, is there anybody who has like a strong interest in thinking about like our community calls and just community events? Some of this is going to be like very nitty gritty, like how do we just remove the I mean, some of it's related to the kind of the winding down of some of the working groups. So it's like just removing some of the events that are still kind of showing up for some reason, and making sure that the calendar is really clear. But then it's thinking, I think, a little bit bigger picture about things like orientation call, community call. What should those things look like? So anybody, is this something that resonates with folks on the call? Is something they'd be willing to dive into?
Just wanted to point out that, like, we talk about the calendar. We've got a bot doing all of the calendar events now. So if you delete anything on the Discord side, it will continue to pop up every week. Just if you did it that way, the calendar events need to be deleted via the Google Calendar that we have typically. Yeah, just that.
Okay, Bear, I see you put your name down for that. I mean, that may be enough. I'm certainly I'll certainly help with that too. But Bear, if you can be kind of the driver on that, that'd be great. And anybody got like particular like interest, maybe not driving it, but if you got strong opinions about that, are there people here who feel like, hey, I would like to be consulted on this early on in the advice process? Okay. All right. So Olivia?
I feel I have strong opinions to give if anyone wants them.
Okay, that's great. I'll put you down as like advice. That's great. Okay. Anything else on the community meeting side of things? All right. We're just cruising along here. All right. So returning funds to the common pool, multi-sig process as stated above. So yeah, I think this showed up twice in the exercise last week. So we can probably just roll this into the multi-sig. I think that probably makes sense. Anybody object to that? Okay, I have a question then. Yeah, I'm going to link this right now to the last one, this paying people for the work in this transition. So, maybe the cleanest thing to do would be to just return all funds to the common pool. But given how hard it is to get things passed in the common pool, and given that we probably don't want to go for a month without paying folks, there is this idea of basically just using one of the, so there's funding that's left in Sampo. We could just basically change the name, so Sampo goes away, and change it to whatever we call this group. I think it's probably around 11K that's left. And we could use that as an interim strat. It was basically an interim funding pool to pay folks for the transition work. And maybe, we take some of the the comm stuff, Chewy, and use that to pay for Acid to do Twitter work, and just basically pour that over. That would be one option. So I guess the general question is, do we do it? I don't know if it's by the book or maybe it's not even by the book, but like, do we send it back? Do we just send it all back to the common pool? Or do we say there's a risk there of like having to like go for several weeks with not being able to pay people? And it's better to just be pragmatic and use an existing fund to pay. Thoughts on that?
I have very strong feelings about sending funds again to the common pool. At least like right now, I'm pretty much against for a few reasons. I think first of all, too early. We don't know how much it's going to cost or how much time it's going to take. Then while token holders voted for something, I think there are always cases where working groups have to exert their supposed independence to be able to allocate them accordingly, and we have to. The situation. I think this is a situation that requires working groups taking those kinds of decisions. Um, and then lastly, in the worst case, we can do a snapshot together to make a template check or whatever instead of returning them. Like, I believe we should return them, but once we know how much it's going to cost, how much do we actually need to move forward, because they are already out of the common pool. And um, generally speaking, we proposals were made to keep the TEC moving, and we are technically keeping the TEC moving. It's just that the situation has changed, and so um, that's where I'm at.
I mean, I also want to say, as someone who felt very strongly that we should return it to the commons, like when a working group, excuse me for that announcement, if you can have, that if a working group was sunsetting, they would return the funds to the common pool. I now also feel very much the opposite, specifically because the transition can't happen unfunded, and that if a working group is going to retire and we can consolidate the funding in order to support a transition to this new structure, I think it really makes the most sense. And in fact, we wouldn't be able to even support a transition without it. And then I like the idea of following the process of having token holders agree via a community vote, so a snapshot vote.
Yeah, I agree with what you say, Tam. I think specifically if the roles of this working group are going to be taken over directly by this new new organization, then it does lie within the funds of that like then it isn't as obscene to move the funds away from that working group. So if this new consolidated working group is going to take over the role for transparency, then it makes sense that whatever is left in that multi-sig be moved on to this. So long as there's continuity in the roles, then there can be continuity with the funds. However, I still think that if there is no continuity, if the completeness of that if the totality of that working group is to be phased out and nothing is going to replace it, then no, it should go to the multi-sig just based on principle. That even if it's difficult times, we still need to we still need to respect the voters.
I mean, in the end, the money is controlled by the multi-sig. If the group sunsets themselves, then the multi-sig needs to decide whether or not to send the funds there or donate the funds or do whatever they want with the funds. I feel like that's just the laws on chain, and we can of course suggest and culturally influence things, but in the end, it's the multi-sig who decides. And if they feel like there's still work to be done in the transition, they should keep paying themselves from the multi-sig. And once they sunset, if they decide, yeah, well, the best thing to do is to send this back to the common pool, then that's where it should go.
Any other thoughts? Okay, well, these are good. I think these are really good, and I think we just knocked out the last one here, so that's good. So technology support, Rex and NT. Anything? I see you've already been putting stuff in there. One thing I would like to add is just basically like a comprehensive list of all the dependencies we have. And yeah, just like a quick, like, here's each one of these things, our website, the, Git book, blah, 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 every single one of them is like, what is the dependency? Just a quick summary that's like, here's what we've got. Just so we have like an inventory of, if things were to go wrong with those things, like we know what they are, have like some indication of like who is driving those tools. Of course, it would probably, we want to tie it back to the password management too. So I think that would be great. And NT, you and I have talked about that before. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I just linked the document I started. It is already it is still a work in progress. But yeah, we have a lot of things to take care of, a lot of things to watch out for, and especially now with the transition, there are some things that we may not need anymore, and others that we may have to do some research to include to support us better. And so this is something that generally Rex and I have been doing. Rex on a more technical level with Dune and bot support and stuff, and me that have done a few of the things. And I think that we I guess just keep doing that. I don't know if Rex has anything to say.
Yeah, sure. I think that it does make sense to have not just a list of the dependencies, but things that could go wrong. For example, in Discord, we have a number of admins, which basically just gives you the ability to nuke the whole server. If any one of these admins doesn't have two-factor authentication, or for some reason their laptop's stolen or anything, like whoever has control of that account can just nuke our whole server, which is our biggest point of communication. So that's just one. I'm sure that there's others. And yeah, obviously that one lies with both credentials management and technology support. It's like an interlinking of both. But yes, it is certainly something that we can take a look at and find the biggest pain point and these issues that we should probably sort out and have due process for. I did add Dune there because June yesterday announced pretty much out of the blue that they're going to archive all of our queries in 6 weeks because they're built on an older engine to the one that they want to use. So that will be. I'm going to do a more clear proposal next Tuesday, so I wouldn't like to spend too much on it. But yeah, I just wanted to point out that the financial management, which would lie under technology support, is like someone needs to do that. Someone needs to port all the queries from the old engine to the new engine, and whether it's JH or it's myself, yeah, that will need to be done.
Okay, cool. Thank you both. That's okay. So, and then the last one on here is the phasing out the working groups, which it seems like Nate, are you driving that, and Tam and I are kind of helping on the side? Is that right?
Yeah, we can do that. The one thing is that the meet up with the working group stewards who are phasing out the working groups. Some of them are gone. For example, Communitas I'll be taking on. But having that offboarding checklist done and ready, including forum posts and discussing learnings, we should have that. We need to select a date for that. I think we need to select a deadline for that for everybody to just kind of like, let's put this behind us, move forward, get this all done. So does anybody have a good time period or projection for that? Is 2 weeks enough?
Can I
Maybe Nate?
interject for a moment? I know that there are 3 working groups now that are sunsetting. But in my perspective, I don't know that all working groups are sunsetting at this moment. And I don't know if that was a misunderstanding on my part, but I think that we need to continue to look at the process and talk with the stewards of each of the working groups and have conversations and see what responsibilities there are in the working group, whether those make sense to transition to the one team. But yeah, I just want to be very clear that my understanding is not, hey, all working groups are stopping right now, but that the transition will take place over time with more conversations and discussion happening. Is that what other people understand too?
Yes, I do see that as being the case. I did mention rewards last week. I think that rewards is pretty strong as a working group, and it will keep on going that way. And what's interesting to understand, yes, is the mechanics of like interaction, let's say, between this consolidated working groups and those that remain. I assume that we're all going to be on par. So the working groups can maintain their independence. But it's just something to figure out and have a formal understanding of.
Yeah. And that's also what I mean. I think that there's just a few more discussions that have to happen before we have the full shape of it.
Thank you. That's good. Good reminder. Okay, so I think we got through all this, and we've got 5 minutes to spare. Let me just, we're not gonna have time to do like a go round with everybody, but we do have 5 minutes if anybody has any closing thoughts they'd like to share.
Do you want to use this time to start looking into the board?
Sure, but yeah, so then we can just, if nobody has any other thoughts, yeah, I mean, I don't want to keep everybody here to do that. So if there's no other closing thoughts, then we can end a few minutes early.
Maybe I'll just have one closing thought, which is I want to say just thank you so much, Gideon. Your leadership and commitment to the TEC is exemplary. And I want to say how much I appreciate how well you are taking this on.
Thanks, Dan. Okay. All right, everybody. So yeah, let's we'll wrap it up here. We'll meet again on Tuesday next week, and hope to have some stuff for people to look at before then. And yeah, thank you, everybody. I'm glad. Nice turnout today. Thank you. All right, and so Livy and Bear, do you want to hang out?
Thank you guys. Great discussion. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Gideon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gideon.
Thanks, everyone. See you.
everybody.
Everybody.